Hello everybody, I'm Jessie D, your extreme crafter bestie, and today I'm going to show you how to make the viral styrofoam ornaments you've all been requesting like crazy. Okay, so let's get started. I'm going to first give you a review of all the different supplies that you're going to need and then some optional swaps that you can do. So first of all, the most obvious one is you are going to need styrofoam balls to decorate. You're also going to need a pencil to draw on the design lines. You can use a pen, obviously, but I recommend a pencil because if you have any fabrics that are slightly see-through, the pencil is going to be the best option. You can also erase any lines that you screw up, which is an added benefit of the pencil. You're also going to need coordinating fabric swatches right here. So I have a few different stacks that I picked up. I personally am a sewer, so I have a ton of little scraps laying around. So if you happen to sew quilts or anything, now's a great time to use up all your fun little scraps that you have. Otherwise, if you're not and you just want to do this craft and you're really into it, I recommend going to a local quilt shop and looking for some fat eighths, or you can even just do an 1/8 yard cuts. Most of the styrofoams are going to want 3 colors. I plan on creating a few in these different color options, so I picked out 5 for each colorway. You really only need 3 to do most of the designs, but I wanted to have a few extras so not everything is the exact same and they can kind of be coordinating and fun. When you're picking out your prints, make sure to go smaller than larger. Anything that's larger, so I do have one that's larger that I think I can make work, but this, for example, isn't going to be as obvious when you're putting it into those tiny spots. So in general, when in doubt, skew towards a smaller repeat or print. The next thing that you're going to need is you are going to want to pick up some of these ornament hooks, the clear plastic ones. You can also get metal ones, I believe, but these clear plastic ones have worked great for the styrofoam. You're also going to want some wire. This actually happens to be like floral crafting wire. You can use a variety of different wires. Really, you're just going to use this for tying on the ribbons. So if you have wire laying around, you most likely can make it work. You're also going to want a hot glue gun. This is to secure this wire in place when you put it into the foam ball so it doesn't fall out. You are going to need scissors to chop the fabric. You're also going to want an X-Acto knife to cut into the styrofoam ball once you have the designs done. Here's a traditional crafting X-Acto knife. This is actually a seam ripper that I use. It kind of looks like a scalpel. I prefer this because it gives me a really fine cut and it's easy to work with, and I'm used to working with this. So let me know if you want a link to this and I can link this for you. I do recommend looking for an X-Acto that's slightly smaller. If you're using one that's used for more construction type things, it's going to leave a bigger cut, and we kind of want to keep those cuts as slim as possible. Another little add-on that I did not actually use this with my first 2, but you can. If you're having trouble when you're inserting the fabric into the styrofoam and it's getting a little bit thick, you can use this precision glue, which is my favorite craft glue ever. It comes with a few different heads that you can put on it. This just gives you a really fine bead. So if when we're finished, you want to add a little bead of glue just to make sure everything stays put, this is a really good option. It dries clear and it goes on really easy and really nice. Also, I think I'm going to try at the end of this tutorial to add a little bit of glitter in the lines of one of mine just to see what it looks like. I like to explore and see what other cool things I can do with project. And the better you get at this, the more you can break the rules. And I love to break the rules. Go ahead and get yourself some ribbons. I personally prefer ribbons with a lot of drape to them that's flowy, especially for this type of project. This is seam binding, so it's woven edge rayon. It's basically for finishing seams. So I think I bought this when I lived in Chicago. There's a store that would go to down there. I'll look it up if you guys are interested in this and see if I can find a link for it. But this stuff is fabulous. It just looks really shiny and fancy, but it's also really lightweight. So this is a great option for ribbons. Let me know if you want a link for that. Okay, so step 1 is going to be to draw the lines onto the actual styrofoam ball for the design that you want. So we're going to reference this design. I recommend using a pencil because it's going to show up less. So if you have lighter color fabrics, you won't see those lines through it. However, for this tutorial, I'm going to use a pen just so you can see it better of what I'm actually doing. You can use both if you want. If you use a pen, you do risk seeing through some of it, but a pencil, you won't see that. You'll create more like etched lines. So to start, we're going to start at the top. We're going to draw a little X at the top. There should be a manufacturing like circle that you can see that will show you that's where the true top is. And there's my little X. I'm also going to flip it over and I'm going to do the same thing over here. I want a little X. And then what we're going to do is attach those 2 lines together, right? So we want to create as perfect as we can a circle here. And it doesn't need to be an exact line. You could kind of do a dashed line as long as you kind of know where you're going. And you're going to just want to eyeball it and make sure that it's turning into a circle and it's almost evenly split in half. Okay, so I have that done. The next thing, we're going to do that to turn it into a quarter. So we're going to take that perpendicular line there, do the same thing. We want to make sure that we're evenly spaced between both sides. And you just kind of twist it to get a quick look at it as you go. And then we're gonna do that on the other side here. And then we're gonna do 2 more lines to create ace, because now we have quarters and you wanna create ace. And this is a little bit easier to do because now you can actually see it. So you just wanna make sure that you're even between the 2 other lines, just to kind of create as much of a symmetrical object as you can. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and speed this up so you guys don't have to watch too much of this. Okay, so we have it split into 8 different sections. The next step is going to be to create these little square details here. The way I did that is I took my equator, is what I call it, which is this manufacturing line that goes around the center. And I went up about 1/2 inch. I eyeballed it. You can measure if you want, but I go about 1/2 inch from there and create a little dash. And I'm doing that on every line that I have. And I'll go ahead and speed this up here too. All right, so now that we have that done, we're gonna take this line here and move it all the way up to there. And what we're doing is creating that square detail and then make the X coming from the other side right there. So I'll do that one more time here to show you what that's gonna look like. And we're basically creating that square pattern. Okay, so go ahead and complete that all the way around. All right, there you go. So the next step is going to be to take your X-Acto knife and to cut out all these things. You do want to remember, do not extend the line through the center of this square because we're not going to do anything with that. You're going to stop once you get to the top of that, and then you're going to cross over and then go down. You do not want to go through the center of that square. So I'll speed it up here, but this is how you're going to want to do it. If you're using an X-Acto knife, you do want to be careful to just make more cuts like down and in to cut through it, not dragging too much. Because if you drag, you're going to end up pulling pieces of the styrofoam out. So it's more of a down action like this to get it to cut really nice, not dragging like you would typically. Okay, so that is done. The next thing that we're gonna do is we're gonna start applying the different fabric swatches. So what I wanna do is I wanna decide where each of these different prints is gonna go. I decided that I'm gonna do 2 different plaid checks with the tulip on here, and we'll see how it looks. I'm interested to see how this turns out. That's kind of the fun of this whole entire thing, is depending on what you mix and match, you can come up with a totally different look. My goal is to just create a bunch of coordinating ornaments that kind of all end up fitting the vibe, and we'll see how it works. So I'm gonna start by cutting this, and you don't need a lot of fabric for this. So when you're cutting your fabric swatches, and this is why you can use really tiny pieces, you just want to make sure that you're cutting a rectangle or square that's big enough to cover the length and the width of the fabric, and then probably an extra 1/4 inch at least on each side, because you're going to need some extra fabric to tuck into the actual ball. So I'm going to start by just guessing. So I'm gonna start with one this size. We'll see if that works. Yeah, it looks like this will work. What I end up doing is I try to lay it center over top just to make sure that we're in a good spot. And then I like to use the back side of the razor. You can also use a seam ripper. You wanna use something that's really small and fine, but I don't wanna use the side that's gonna actually cut the fabric. I'm using the back side of this seam ripper that I have here. You can also use a nail file or something of the sort, but you're just gonna wanna try to feel where that groove is, and then once you know where it is, you're gonna press down. But again, I wanna clarify, I'm using the back side, so I'm not cutting this at all. And because it's not perfectly flat, you kind of massage it into place and you pull it out as needed to rework it. What we do is we get the initial placement set like that. It's not perfect right now, it doesn't have to be. What we're going to do now that we have it like this though, is we do want to cut off the excess. We want to trim it back before we press it in all the way. we want to go pretty close because we don't have too much room for extra fabric in there. Pro tip on these points where a lot comes together, wherever those points meet, you just want to trim off a tiny, teeny bit just so it's not all stuffed down there because you're not going to see that all. So I do like to trim that back a tad. All right, so now we're looking at it. We're gonna go back through with the back side of the X-Acto knife or your fingernail file and start pushing it all the way down into the foam. All right, so I'm gonna repeat that step on the top for these alternating ones and then put the fabric in between. And then we'll do it on this side and then we'll get to our next step. So I'll film part of this, but I'm gonna fast forward through it so you guys don't have to watch it all because it is repetitive at this point. Now I completed the alternating pattern on the top and the bottom. The next thing that we're gonna do is to add the little green plaid to the center. So because I do want to switch the direction of the plaid from the pink plaid, I cut out a square and I'm laying it this way. And again, we're going to do the same thing that we did on the rest, but because it's such a small piece, so it doesn't skew, you kind of gotta like hold your thumb on the middle and poke it in and then chop around it. I do kind of chop off the triangle tip of each of the edges just because there's so much fabric in the corner intersections that removing a little bit of it tends to be helpful. Takes a little bit of finessing to get this final piece in perfect. If you hold your thumb on the middle, it helps to hold it in place while you do the rest of it. Okay, so there's the finished one. So if you're gonna add glitter, you just wanna apply a bead of this craft glue in between each of the pattern pieces, and then just do it a little bit, one side at a time. That way it has time to dry, and then you just shake the beads out. It poured over a bowl so I don't lose the glitter, because I could put this extra glitter back into the case. So I'm gonna let it dry inside the bowl so the glitter is the only thing that's really touching it, and then the bottom wherever the glue is, the glitter will just stick, and when I pull it out, it will look great. Now, while we're waiting for the glitter to dry, we are gonna start creating this little bow here at the bottom. So what I did for that was I cut 3 slices of ribbon. You want it to be about 2.5 feet long. And then I'm gonna cut the other ones too. So what I did is I cut 3 different lengths, 2 of the same color of ribbon. And what you wanna do is you want to line them up in the middle so the ends of each piece are relatively the same. So once I have that done, I'm gonna pinch it in the middle here and then just set it aside. I wanna grab my wire and I wanna create a good chunk of wire to work with. Once you have your wire cut, I'm going to take the middle and twist it. Next, I'm gonna flip one side over, create my little loops. Then I'm gonna take the other side, fold that over. Then we're going to loop one of the wires around. Then we're gonna do that same thing again. Fold this side over, fold this side over, and loop the other side around. All right, and then once that's done, I'm gonna twist it together like so. And I'm gonna cut another piece of whatever color you prefer, about 10 to 12 inches long. And I'm gonna use that to cover up the metal here, right in the middle. So I'm just gonna put it over it and then bring it back to the top. And I'm gonna tie a knot right by this end, right here. And if I wanna make it extra secure, I can tie one more knot on the other side of the wires like that. And then these knots I'll just let hang down, okay? So I covered up all the wires And then you can pull apart all the little loops here to make it look like a light and fluffy bow. Once you're done fluffing them up, you just chop the ends a little bit to whatever you want, or if you want a slight angle, and then twist these up as much as you can, because we are going to shorten this and stick this into the styrofoam. I'm gonna chop off a little piece like that, and then that is what we're gonna stick into the styrofoam while applying adaptive glue. Okay, so when we're gonna apply the bow, I want to take, you could take a dowel, a pin, or anything really, scissors, little scissors, and you poke that hole right in the center of that just to create a little space for it. And then you're gonna take a hot glue gun and fill that area. Then you're gonna take the pointed part of the bow and feed it into that space and hold it still. And there you go. The bottom's set and we want it to dry. Okay, now we're gonna attach the plastic hook into the hole. If you added glitter like this, and or if you didn't, you might want to use a dowel or a pin or something to kind of poke a starting hole for this if your plastic tips aren't as durable. If you have metal tips, it's probably fine. And then you're going to want to insert the clip into that hole and push down as much as possible like that. And voila, there you go. Okay, so the last step is to create a little holder for that. So you want to cut a little slice of ribbon and hook it in to the plastic hook. You can make these as long as you want. Then you're gonna tie it in a knot or a bow if you have enough. This one I'm just gonna do a knot because I cut it a little bit shorter. And there you go. That is how to make the viral ornament. And that concludes the tutorial. So if you guys can, please hit the like button, hit the share button, and follow along, or subscribe if you're on YouTube. Those likes, those subscribers, they really help me be able to continue to do stuff like this and convince my husband that he should yet again watch the kids for an evening so I can get these crafting tutorials out to all you folks. And make sure to show me your finished project by tagging me in it so I can see all the cool arrangements that you guys come up with.